I guess not all that surprising, but a lot of personal attacks from Magala and Carville, a lot of action behind the scenes. What we're doing is we're staying focused on the message, and the message is the evidence in this book. And what I find amazing is so many people are commenting on this book saying there's no evidence when they haven't read the book. They have made it very clear and concerted effort.
By the way, I had to sign documents to get a copy of this book saying that I wouldn't release, But here's what's fascinating about this, and this is why I keep saying to Republican candidates, and you were on with Stephanopoulos yesterday.
Yeah.
He is the special pleader for Hillary Clinton. Yeah. That relationship has never shifted. It's never changed. And while he's making this claim, well, no, substantive proof and an example and citing ABC's own investigation, go to the New York Times.
Right.
They're not part of my right-wing conspiracy.
That's right. Go to the New York Times, go to the Washington Post, actually go to the ABC reports. I mean, he's not correct that there's no evidence. One of the things they pointed out, based on the material in the book, is that Bill Clinton's speaking fees have gone up dramatically when Hillary Clinton became Secretary of State. So either one of two things happened, Sean. Either on January of 2009, Bill Clinton suddenly became even more eloquent than he was before, or foreign corporations, individuals, and governments were lining up because they saw an opportunity to enrich the Clintons and to gain access by paying him much higher speaking fees than he'd ever been paid before.
Even John Heilemann said that Bill Clinton's post-presidency has been marked by greed and carelessness. Eleanor Clift talked about how serious this is. So the only one in the media that's out there really on the ledge is George Stephanopoulos, and that proves that his allegiance and alliance with the Clintons hasn't shifted. This is a very long, complicated story.
Yeah.
Let's go to the beginning.
Okay.
And why don't I let you set the stage, how this book came about, why this is important, and what we're going to get into in terms of details. We got you for a full hour now.
Fabulous. Well, thanks again for having me, Sean. This is the first radio, and yours is the first cable show that we're doing as well.
So we'll see you tonight. Yes.
Yes, I'm looking forward to that. Here's really what we did, Sean, is that we did a book on congressional insider trading. I was on your program, talk about that. Wrote another book on extortion, where we looked at both sides that were extorting businesses for campaign contributions and favors. We wanted to look at the Clintons because this was a unique situation in American history. To have somebody who is a powerful senator, to have somebody who is a sitting Secretary of State whose spouse is going out and making tens of millions of dollars being paid for by foreign businesses and foreign governments, or raising tens of millions of dollars from foreign entities for his foundation, we felt it was unprecedented. And by the way, Barack Obama and Valerie Jarrett recognized it as well. As a condition for Hillary to be appointed Secretary of State,
there's this memorandum of understanding.
That's right.
There's some dispute on that, as you've been reading. This exists.
Yes, absolutely exists, and I would encourage anybody to get a copy of it. You can get a copy of it online, and the claim that the Clintons are making now that, well, we had sort of this Clinton-Juster project, if you read that legal document, it's very clear at the beginning. It defines the Clinton Foundation as including this Clinton-Juster project. There's no way that they can back out of this and claim that the Obama administration was allowing them to have some backdoor way to bring in money that they would not have to disclose. And this is really important, Sean, because what the Clintons are running around saying is, we have voluntarily been this transparent. They were not voluntarily this transparent. This was something that the Obama administration insisted on, something that both John Kerry and Dick Lugar, when they were heading up the Foreign Relations Committee, were absolutely clear on. You have to disclose these donations. And what we showed, and what the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times news pages showed, is that they were getting multi-million-dollar donations that they never disclosed.
Let's start with this Uranium One deal, and let's go to the New York Times. I thought started in a pretty fascinating way. And these are, if I'm not mistaken, Pulitzer Prize-winning writers at the New York Times. They are not out to get the Clintons. They are out for the truth. And I actually applaud them because I've never been the biggest fan of the New York Times, and I think journalism died in 2008 when it came to Barack Obama. But so they talked about the Pravda headline, which said Russian nuclear energy conquers the world. Now, I ended up reading that column 4 times so I could fully and completely absorb it and understand it. I've since read the chapter in your book about it. And the untold story, as they say, is a former American president, a woman who would like to be president, and their connections to this group of people, and how Vladimir Putin was able to negotiate 20% control of our uranium assets. Uranium to make nuclear bombs, yellow cake, uranium being sent to Canada against American laws. All this happens and is revealed here. We have $2.35 million donation from the head of the Russian government's uranium company going to the Clintons. And then we've got a $30 million payment going to the Clintons.
Yes.
Explain it. And a $500,000 speaking fee going to President Clinton.
Right. It's an amazing story, Sean. What you have essentially, this is a story about four things: Hillary Clinton, Russia, uranium, and $145 million going to the Clintons in this deal. That's what this story is about.
This whole deal is not just the 30 and the 2.35. It's $145 million going to either the Clintons themselves or the Clinton Foundation.
That's exactly right. It begins in 2005. Bill Clinton, with a Canadian investor, Frank Juster, go to Kazakhstan. Bill Clinton says very favorable things about the dictator, Nazarbayev.
By the way, against American foreign policy at the time.
Absolutely. And against, at that time, what Hillary had said at that point about Kazakhstan, which is she felt that they had human rights problems. But that changes. And after that meeting, Frank Juster is given these uranium concessions by the dictator of Kazakhstan. And shortly after that, Frank Juster sends $30 million to Bill Clinton. Now, here's where it gets interesting, Sean, because these uranium assets...
This is important here. Yeah. So Bill helps this guy get a huge deal that is pivotal to his financial success in this business.
The estimate is that Frank Juster made $300 million off this deal.
Okay, the New York Times suggested about $40 or $50 million.
Right. The estimates vary because he won't disclose it. The Kazakh official that was involved in this, a man named Zakashev, in a video deposition said he estimated it was 300 to Frank Juster. It could be 40 to 50 million.
Wow.
It could be anywhere in that range. Frank Juster's not talking. But here's what happens, Sean, is that company becomes Uranium One. They start buying uranium assets in the United States. And we can chart, and I do this in the book, not one, not two, but 9 investors in Canada who end up sending money to the Clinton Foundation.
How much?
Who are shared a total of $145 million. And then the Russians get involved. The Russians see that this is a valuable company. It's got all these uranium assets in the United States. It's got these assets in Kazakhstan.
But they really wanted the Kazakhstan ones.
That's right.
But in the process, they had a 17% share of Uranium One, and then it went to 51%.
That's exactly right. And so who was involved in that deal? Well, the two financial advisors in the deal, both of them major Clinton Foundation donors.
How much?
About $1 to $5 million apiece each, because they only reveal in ranges. You've got the chairman of the uranium company, Ian Telfer, who stays on when the Russians take over.
How much did he give?
Well, it's hard to say because we have the undisclosed $2.35 million. He may have given others. We don't know, but at least $2.35 million.
And they were also funneling money through their friends to the Clinton Foundation.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And then you have others, a gentleman named Holmes, who's the head of an investment firm that was a large shareholder in the deal. He not only has given between $1 and $5 million to the Clinton Foundation, he's also an official advisor at the Clinton Foundation. So here's what's interesting in what happens. To make this deal go through, there needs to be federal government approval. And in a short succession of time, a couple of very curious things happen. First of all, Bill Clinton gets invited to give a speech in Moscow. It's the first speech that he's been invited to give in Moscow in more than 5 years.
$500,000.
$500,000. So last time he spoke in Moscow, he made less than half that. He made $195,000. Who is the company that is paying Bill Clinton to do this? It's called Renaissance Capital. Renaissance Capital, and I talk about this in the book, is populated with ex-KGB generals, ex-Russian Secret Service. It's tied in close to Putin. Everybody knows that. And they're actually at this time shilling for Uranium One, saying this is a great investment. So Bill goes and gives a speech to them. There's another curious development that we don't have all the answers to yet. The Clintons also get a $2.5 million donation from a company called Salida Capital out of Canada. What's curious about this is the timing. It's right before this deal is going through. But we trace in the book, there is a Salida Capital in Panama that we believe is the parent company of Salida Capital Canada. Salida Capital Panama is a wholly owned subsidiary of Rosatom.
Which is the Russian
which is the Russian State Atomic Nuclear Agency. We've called Rosatom. I know that reporters at Fox News and others have called to ask for clarity on this. Nobody will answer any questions.
How did Hillary approve the Russian takeover of Uranium One, which gives them the 51% stake in Uranium One, which also means 20% of American uranium assets?
Well, exactly. So Hillary is at the heart of the so-called Russian reset, which is taking place at this time, right?
This is between 2008 and 2013.
That's exactly right. And Hillary's job is to develop closer relationships with Moscow. So a couple of months before this deal is approved, she's meeting with Vladimir Putin. She's meeting with Lavrov, the foreign minister, on a regular basis. She's in charge of the A123 nuclear civilian cooperation discussions with Moscow. Her job is as a member of CFIUS, which is the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States. She has to sign off on this deal. There are 9 government agencies that have to sign off on this deal. Any one of them object, they basically have veto power. What's interesting is, of course, Hillary Clinton and her husband are the only ones that have collected $145 million with this deal going down. But the second thing that's very, very curious, Sean, is that Hillary is an absolute hawk on these issues. You might remember the Dubai ports deal a few years ago when Dubai wanted to buy ports in the United States. Hillary objected radically because she said that this was destroying American sovereignty. So she has pushed over the years for a very strong stance to having foreign government agencies take control of critical assets. But in this case, that doesn't happen, and the deal goes through.
You know, there's a memo sent out by the Clinton camp today. Did you see today's memo?
I have not seen today's memo.
Yeah, really? You didn't know that you're a big, you're obviously in their head in a pretty significant way. And this is now the second time that they've sent out a memo about you. And let me read some of it to you if I can here, if I can pull this thing up on my computer. Here it is. From Brian Fallon, Hillary for America National Press Secretary. We greatly appreciate all the support we've gotten from all of you in helping beat back the false innuendo contained in Clinton Cash. Over the past week, it was billed as a bombshell book written in the voice of a neutral journalist, meticulously sourced, and turned out to be nothing more than a tangled web of conspiracy theories. We're back to the vast right-wing conspiracy.
Right.
Today we believe we have turned the corner, as the author himself, Peter Schweizer, conceded multiple times on national TV that his conspiracy theories lack any evidence that he omitted. And guess what they use as their highlight?
What?
The interview with George Stephanopoulos.
Well, and what
a hack this guy is.
Well, and here's the thing, Sean, that's so outrageous about their position. They are basically saying that I, as an author, if I cannot prove as an author that criminality took place, then it's a non-story.
That's not the point.
That's right. That's exactly not the point.
Stay right there.
Intervened in this issue. No, we don't have direct evidence, but it warrants further investigation because, again, George, this is part of a broader pattern. You either have to come to the conclusion that these are all coincidences or something else is afoot.
All right, that special pleader for the Clintons, George Stephanopoulos, of course, part of the Clinton War Room back in the day when Bill was running. Peter Schweizer's with us. Clinton Cash, the untold story of how and why foreign governments and businesses helped make Bill and Hillary rich. How rich are they?
Well, we know that between 2001 and 2012, their income was $136 million.
Serious money.
Yes, serious money.
So they're worth at least $100 million, probably.
Yes, that would be the estimate. I mean, it's always hard to kind of estimate.
It's interesting. Now the Clinton Foundation is saying, "Oh, we made mistakes," and now they got to go back with the IRS and make all. Why do I imagine that if I had to go back 5 years with the IRS, that I wouldn't? It wouldn't be as forgiving.
Well, here's the ridiculous thing about all of this is they promised complete transparency in 2008 to Barack Obama, to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and to the American people. They didn't deliver. Now they're saying, oops, we made a mistake. We promised for complete transparency. This is why you have groups like Common Cause on the left saying, not good enough. You need to audit the Clinton Foundation.
But as I agree with that, and I also think they should return the money.
Yeah.
Now, I had been over the Clinton Foundation and on them hard because Hillary wants to be a champion of women's rights, gay rights, etc.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, they're taking money from Saudi Arabia. They're taking money from Oman and the UAE, which have atrocious women's rights records. And if you go look, she never criticizes them.
Yeah.
So it kind of fits into the narrative. I want you to just go back to this Russian uranium deal for one more second.
Right.
Because I want you to tie this together. So you've got her approving a deal that allows Putin to have 20%, a controlling interest in uranium one, a 51% controlling interest that controls 20% of our uranium. In the lead up to that, you're saying $145 million made it either into the Clintons' pockets directly or into the Clinton Foundation's coffers.
Right, exactly.
And she signed off on this herself as a Secretary of State.
That's exactly right. And what's interesting, as I said, is that this is a complete policy reversal. And Sean, this is what we see over and over again. We see this with the Indian nuclear deal.
I want to get to that in a minute, but we've got this deteriorating relationship with Putin and Israel and the rest of the world, and nobody respects Obama. But think about this. Putin has just now promised that he would provide the Iranians missile defense. In other words, if the Israelis wanted to take out their nuclear sites, clearly Obama won't do it. But I can see an alliance between the Saudis, the Israelis, the Egyptians, and Jordanians that might want to do it. And now Putin will provide them the missile defense and make it much more difficult. What would stop Putin from taking all of this uranium, including yellow cake that was shipped to Canada against the American laws, and giving it to the Iranians?
That's the real concern here, that U.S. uranium could be going to Canada and could end up in Russia or elsewhere. Who knows? I mean, the
20% of it is theirs.
That's exactly right. And the agreement that the Russians said they were going to keep is that they would not export this uranium out of the United States. And as Joe Becker in the New York Times confirmed,
it's already happening.
It's exactly right. It's already happening. Promise after promise has been broken on this deal.
Go to the Indian nuclear deal and explain how we had a shift again in Hillary's mindset. In other words, her public position at one point changes once there is a quid pro quo or money is donated. Explain it.
Yeah, so, Bill Clinton is president, and in 1998, the Indian government does a bunch of underground nuclear tests. Bill Clinton's very upset about it, and he imposes restrictions on the export of U.S. nuclear technology to India. Hillary Clinton gets in the Senate in 2000, joins the Armed Services Committee, and is somebody who's very committed to the Non-Proliferation Treaty. The anger and frustration with the Indian government was they violated the Non-Proliferation Treaty by doing those tests. And Hillary has always said she absolutely is supportive of the NPT. So is Bill Clinton. 2005, the Indian government says, we want to get these technology restrictions lifted. There's legislation introduced. Hillary is opposed to that legislation.
She's a senator at the time.
That's right. She's a senator. She supports so-called killer amendments to kill this deal. Now, between 2005 and 2008, money from Indian interests flow to the Clinton Foundation. Bill Clinton gives speeches. In fact, they're getting money from Indian politicians. There's an Indian politician named Amar Singh who is said to have donated between $1 and $5 million. Now, he's somebody who has a long history of passing out money to Indian members of parliament for votes. Here's the problem. They list Amar Singh as a donor. The problem is when you talk to Amar Singh, he says, I don't have that kind of money. The money came from someone else, but he won't tell you where it came from.
So it probably came from the Indian government.
That's right. That's right. That's what.
So they're willing to pay the Clinton Foundation to get a vote change, and it's pay to play.
Well, yeah, and what happens is in 2008, there's another vote on the Indian Nuclear Accord.
And lo and behold,
Hillary Clinton changes her position and not only votes for it, but is identified by Indian activists as one of the leading advocates in favor of this.
How much money are we talking about in the transfer there?
We're talking about tens of millions of dollars there.
Tens of millions of dollars going right into, again, to the Clintons' pockets directly.
Yes.
And into the Clinton Foundation pockets directly.
That's exactly.
How much has the Clinton Foundation taken in total?
The estimate is since 2001, it's taken in close to $2 billion.
$2 billion.
$2 billion.
And
yes.
how do you have 5 years or 6 years worth of accounting errors that the IRS now that they apparently had to go back and even since your book has come out, they've recognized that we've made a few little itsy bitsy mistakes here.
Right.
When in fact none of this would have come to light otherwise.
Yeah, and that's the problem is, Sean, we don't know what we don't know, right? We don't. They're saying, we made some mistakes. Yes, Ian Telfer did make this donation. How many other undisclosed donations are out there? We're supposed to take their word for it that there aren't any.
So at some point, I would imagine that the Obamas and the administration are going to get a little pissed off because this was a big concern of theirs. And as more questions get asked, they're saying to themselves, why didn't Hillary stick by the agreement?
Well, that's the way that I would look at it, Sean. I think in a way, think about this for a second. President Obama is elected. He defeated Hillary Clinton in the primary. He invites her to come in as Secretary of State. And he says, I want you as Secretary of State, but you've got to promise to do these things for me. The Clintons say yes, and almost immediately ignore it.
So at some point, I think the rubber hits the road here.
I would think so.
The New York Times raised this. You talked about it. You have a whole chapter in the book about this. What are they being paid for?
Right.
Now, this is fascinating. In other words, I think the New York Times, the way they described it was, are they doing it out of love? No, they're trying to buy influence. And what you see is you actually lay this out in a pretty methodical way in the book, I think well written. And that is that at the time the speeches come in, at the time the money comes in, it's all coming in at key points. In other words, the uranium money is coming in during the Uranium One deal. The Indian money is coming in during the Indian deal.
Yeah.
And you've got this pattern of behavior. Now the question is, are they doing it because they love the Clintons, they believe in the foundation, they want to be philanthropic and help people, or are they trying to buy influence?
Well, if you look at the foreign media that talks about some of these individuals giving money to the Clintons, they will tell you that these individuals are not particularly charitable in their home countries.
No.
But when it comes to this charity in New York that is politically connected, they become very charitable. And when you look at the flow of funds or the flow of speeches, whether it's Bill Clinton getting paid to give speeches by the largest shareholder in the Keystone XL pipeline, while Hillary is considering that issue. He had never been paid by this entity for a speech before. Suddenly, it's up before the State Department. The largest shareholder in the Keystone Pipeline says, we want to pay Bill $2 million to give a series of speeches.
No.
They didn't do it before it was up before the State Department. They didn't do it after. They did it during. It might be a coincidence, but it's again and again and again.
Yeah, I mean, and there's other instances. I'm looking at the clock. I don't have as much time as I'd want with you, which is why we'll have you on TV tonight. But we also have Haitian relief issues that come up. Bill Clinton Does Africa, I think is the name of the chapter that you wrote about him. Explain in those instances how they're making money.
Yeah, I mean, Africa, to me, honestly, it's like 19th century colonialism, really. I mean, when you look at the people, one of the people that is the largest givers to the Clinton Foundation is a gentleman from Nigeria named Gilbert Chagori. Gilbert Chagori, at the Clinton Global Initiative, pledged $1 billion. $1 billion. Who is Gilbert Chagori? Gilbert Chagori is a Nigerian businessman who was convicted in Geneva, Switzerland in 2000 for money laundering and aiding and abetting a criminal enterprise. He was helping the dictator of Nigeria take U.S. aid dollars and oil money to put in Swiss bank accounts. This is a guy who in 2010, the U.S. Justice Department charged for bribery. Gilbert Chagori was also business partners with Mark Rich. You remember Mark Rich? Mark Rich, who Bill Clinton pardoned on his last day.
By the way, he got a lot of money from that deal, too.
That's exactly right. That's who Gilbert Chagori is. Now, given his track record, the Clintons are glad to take his money. And by the way, Gilbert Chagori got a personal invitation for Bill Clinton's 60th birthday party. These are the sorts of people.
It's like hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, Jeffrey Epstein's another guy. I mean, he's a convicted pedophile. They took money even after the conviction.
Yeah.
And he's flying around planes, heading on out to his orgy island, and God knows what's going on there.
Yeah, I mean, it's a remarkable cast of characters. I mean, we talk in the book about the undisclosed donations, and there's several others. But you look at who they have disclosed. Lucas Lundin, $100 million pledged to the Clinton Foundation. His financial empire, it comes from mining in the Congo. How did they get their mining assets in the Congo? They struck a deal with warlords.
Unbelievable.
That's how they make their money, and the Clintons are glad
to. The Clintons have no shame whatsoever. So, I mean, I think Heilemann is right, and it may be a lot nicer than you or I might be, but, their post-presidency is one of greed and selfishness and selling out any principles that they've had.
It's hard to find what is the criteria they would use to reject a contributor.
That's a great point. Here, I'm asking you to speculate now based on all this. I have two questions, two parts of this. How is it that nobody else in the media had picked up any of this? Honestly, this sort of came out of the blue.
Yeah.
And the sad thing for you is your book's not even out till next week.
No,
so you're missing a week worth of advertising sales here, but it's so deep, people are going to have to buy it.
Well, thank you.
And number two, as you look, nobody's picked up on it, and it's so vast.
Yeah.
One has to wonder why. Why? How does this go missing? How do you miss something? I would think you'd win a Pulitzer Prize for this.
Well, I tell you, Sean, first of all, it's a complicated, complex story. We had a team of researchers working on this for about a year.
Right.
And we looked at everything, literally, from Ukrainian shipping records to Canadian tax records to track this down. Very, very difficult story. What we did once we found the material and we put the manuscript together, we actually went to the investigative team at the New York Times, at the Washington Post, the news site.
Their credits, they saw something here.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, these are not cupcakes. These are not people you say.
Do you believe they did advance the story?
I think they did, yes.
Did, yeah.
I think they did. And I think they did great reporting, and they confirmed important things. This is the kind of issue that I think is fundamental, because this is a level of cronyism and corruption.
So disgusting.
The first chapter in the book we call the Lincoln bedroom on a global scale.
That's well said.
Because I think that's really what you're talking about.
You know, I would think after reading the book, there's an indictment here. I get, as far as I'm concerned, after reading this book, if we had a prosecutor and an attorney general, Hillary Clinton should, and Bill Clinton should be indicted for bribery.
I think
and Mitt Romney has said it, and Newt Gingrich has said it. I'm saying it. That's how compelling this case is to me.
Well, I think what has to happen next is there needs to be an investigation with somebody that has actual subpoena powers.
Agreed.
And
here we go, Trey Gowdy all over again. All right, so you're going to join me on TV tonight. There's still a lot we haven't even touched on. The book is called